Hello, Tom Lebecki here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. Today we got a very special guest, and it's actually somebody that I actually met before from doing some previous media for New Theory, actually. And I'm really excited to have him on. And it's an Italian name, but I'm probably going to butcher it because I don't know how people pronounce it. But in Italian, to be Ralph Di Bugnata. But
That's actually really good, actually. And that's actually the proper way to say it.
And then what's your English what's your English Ellis Island version?
It's Ralph Di Bugnara.
Got it. Listen, we all do it for acclimating to this great country. All right, so Ralph.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So Ralph is he's got a few things cooking. He's president of Home Qualified, vice president of Cornell Financial, and this guy is like the millennial banker, the millennial broker. He got into this a while ago before it was kind of cool to work with millennials. So Ralph, welcome to New Theory Podcast. How you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, sweet. All right, so let's chat. So Ralph, so you are, typically people that get on the show, I'm pretty picky, I'm getting pickier. When Ralph was pitched to me, it was a snap yes, because you've been really successful in the real estate space. Before you got to here, what did you do and how did you get here?
So I started in mortgages probably about 16, 17 years ago, before the financial crisis, where it was, you got into the business, it was really, really easy to make money because it was raining mortgages, because it was just kind of light on restrictions. So, I took that all the way until 07, 08 and into the financial crisis, where it all really, even for me, came crashing down. I really went from making a significant amount of money to being completely broke overnight, and within 3 or 4 months, through all my savings, my 401k, had to move out of my, I was living in a penthouse apartment on Wall Street, and 3 months later, I was living in a rent-controlled apartment with my then girlfriend uptown, who became my wife. But so it was a roll. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. I stayed in the industry. I went back to just sales, and I built a business again, and went back to owning my business at some point. But it's really, real estate and mortgages has become a very, very hot topic again, and a hot industry again. But it's been a little bit of a roller coaster over the last 10 years, but for me, it's, it's worked. I just kind of stayed with it.
Okay. So I don't want to gloss over the crisis first, because I want to see how you rebounded, how you did it.
Sure.
So when it happened, we all know what happened. No need to reiterate. But did you get whacked on the asset side? Like, hey, my money was here, right?
Yeah.
I alluded to, or did you get whacked to also asset, but also the income side? So not only are you making no money, but the money you kind of had out there also evaporates. So give us like the damage that was done roughly.
Yeah. So for me, I went from having a very high 6-figure job and literally overnight, within like 48 hours, and being out of it, and went from that to zero. So the income side was affected worse. It was crazy. What I think that the millennials and the younger generations have right is where I screwed up then, because, from the generation I'm from, and you can understand this, that, you got a job and you stayed in the job for 30 years and you worked at the same company and you didn't have to do anything. So I was at a publicly traded Wall Street company that I didn't network outside of the company. I figured I could just be there forever and make money. And then the world came crashing down, and I had no contacts. I had no real friends outside of the company, and they were all out of work. So it was essentially a start over for me. So, first the income went, and then the assets went. I owned a lot of properties, which I either had to sell, or I kept some of them, and I was able to keep some of them, and they were way underwater, so they weren't really good investments at that point. Wow. And, I just really had to go back to being a loan officer at a brand new company. So I was a senior vice president of a publicly traded company. I went back to being a salesperson, working 12, 15 hours a day to make a third of the money, and I knew nobody. So essentially, the first 6 to 7 years of my career ended up being for naught. It taught me good life lessons, but for business purpose, I got nothing out of it. I essentially started anew in 2008. So, on both sides, I got hit.
So what I want to know about is, because, people listen to the podcast, we're very fortunate where we have very successful people, but we also have some folks that are going through some hard times. And if you're ever going through some hard times, drop me a line at tom@newtheory.com, because I was going through a rough time roughly 3 years ago, and I'm finally getting my head out of my ass. So for me, it took about 3 years to really kind of get back to some steady state. I'm not saying I made it all back yet, but to get back to some steady state. So give me like, what did you do first? Obviously you got the job and you worked your ass off, but those are things that you do as a hustler. What did you do strategically, your mindset, to kind of say, hey, let me fix this? And frankly, I want to know how long it took.
So, when I look back on it now, like, I don't know if there was a lot of strategy involved, because I was in a free fall. So, you just, for my purposes, just kind of what I just grew up around, that I got up and worked just everything. I just went back to work. Like every single day I went back to work. I got rid of all my expenses, pretty much everything. I got rid of the cars. I got rid of the extra apartments. I got rid of everything because I had no choice.
Okay.
But I basically broke it down to where, my brain is like, I'm going to live very, very low to the ground for the next 3 years. I'm going to pay off all the debt I've accumulated, and then figure it out from there, which is what I did. But, it's funny because when it was going on, it's almost like when you're in the middle of a fight, like, your adrenaline's going and you don't really know what you're doing. You're just kind of doing it. So I think a lot of that was that. But when I look back on it now, I draw a lot of strength from it and mental confidence from it because, again, there was no help in sight. So I think what I did is I was like, let me go back to what I know how to do. I'll go back to selling. I know I can earn a living that way. I'll start there. So that took me about 3 years of just selling again to just dig out of debt and get back to even. So it probably took me between 2.5 3 years just to get back to even. Once I was back to even, I was in a new business at that point. That was stable and was consistent, and there wasn't a lot of people left. So I realized there was an opportunity for me to grow a business because I had the know-how and people needed to make money again, and they didn't go through what I went through. So then that's when within 5 years, I had my own business reestablished within mortgages where I was running a business again and I was profiting again. But probably for the first 3 years, it just was me digging out of what I had previously done to myself when I was making money.
Okay, so a question to ask you. So when you were killing it, high six figures, you had the car, cars probably, you had the apartment, you had the usual cautionary tale, right? And unfortunately, you lost everything. And then you started to rebuild and you started to regain income and assets. What's one or two things that you got rid of when you started making money again that you choose not to reacquire because you just realized that, you know what, it was just kind of like nonsensical and you didn't need it?
Sure. So debt. So I would say debt. And debt. When I say debt that I can't earn off of. So again, we're always going to have car financing, but I usually will finance. I won't lease at this point. But if it's not a home, financed home. I don't keep any credit card debt at this point. I try to avoid it like the plague because what was going on then, and I kind of like to tell the story now, and I'm glad there was no social media back then. But and it was probably 2006, and I just had gotten off a plane from my place in Florida, Miami, and I was getting out of the car, on Wall Street to my apartment on Wall Street. And I went to the ATM machine, and I had just come back from Florida for the weekend, so I was partying all weekend and doing whatever I was doing. I go to the ATM, I had insufficient funds. So, if I was on social media, I'm sure I would have had all that stuff publicized and it would have looked great, and I would be like, this guy's the man. So what did I do? You figure at that point, okay, wake up call. You're making a lot of money. You have no money in the bank. No, not a wake up call, because I went upstairs. I picked up the mail. I had 10 credit cards in the mail. I opened one of my credit cards. I took a cash advance against the line, and I just kept it going. So what it ended up being my downfall, if I would have lost my job and didn't have debt, a lot of debt, I would have been fine. But because I had accumulated so much credit card debt on top of my houses and everything else, it ended up really being the reason I couldn't dig out really quickly. I mean, I guess I could have and I had a problem too. I couldn't just declare bankruptcy because I had held licenses, financial licenses. So I have to show fiscal responsibility. So if I declared bankruptcy, I would have screwed my licenses up. So I really had no choice, except to dig out. But I think credit card debt would be the one thing that I would never, ever, if I could avoid, go down that road again.
But did you use it as good debt to try to acquire things in terms of?
I didn't. No, I used it to support my lifestyle, which is the problem. So so you're right about that. So I think that if you're using debt, I think if you're using leverage to build something, it's a totally different ballgame. Like, if I'm going to leverage, like now these days, I'll leverage my properties now to buy more properties. So I don't mind taking on debt to do that. So if you're using it as leverage, it's a good idea. If you're using it as lifestyle, and I think I use Disney World as an example because I have little kids, so this kind of makes sense to me right now. But a trip to Disney World for most families at this point is like a $10,000-$12,000 trip, and I don't know if you've ever done it with your kids, but it's expensive.
No, but
which is crazy.
Yeah.
But when you go down there, it's packed with these people. So I look around and I'm like, these people all can't be rich. So what are they doing? What they're mostly doing is they're taking on debt to support their lifestyle instead of sacrificing for it. So the biggest thing I do now is I just try to live low to the ground. I don't have a big mortgage payment. I don't have a huge house. I don't have big payments on cars. And more than anything, from what you said, I want to use my money to work for me. So if I'm going to take on debt, it's going to be so I can make money off of the debt and not use it to support more of my lifestyle.
Okay, so now let's fast forward. So if you followed or listened to everything correctly, you had a really good run, fell on your ass pretty hard, rebuilt through hard work. It took about roughly 3, 4, maybe 5 years of fully economically, mentally, societally, get back to business. How about relationships? You mentioned your wife stuck with you, so that's nice. A lot of times you hear when the rug gets pulled, they're the next to go. You're significant girls. So give us how relationships have formed, shaped, and reshaped over the years as a result of this.
So what I think I learned out of most of all that is that I didn't have big enough of a network, and even the network I had, it wasn't necessarily the right people. And I think, I'm a Brooklyn kid. I grew up in New York, and I think you've always had this attitude, well, my friends are my friends, my family is my family, and I stick with that. What I started to realize about that specifically is that the people I know from when I'm 15, 16, 18, 21, they treat me how they met me. So they're always going to see me as that person they met me as. So whatever that was, it's hard to grow with those people a lot of the times, depending on who it is. Some you can, some you can't. But I had to really go out there and meet new people that could support the person I was today. So the person I was in 2009 and 2010, the guy that had went through the crash, that was starting over, that was trying to work hard, I needed to meet people that were doing the same things I was doing so I could grow with them, whatever it was. And, now I just try to meet people that I think are good for my brain business-wise. Like, I'll talk to somebody like you, and I guarantee out of this conversation, I'll come up with 3 or 4 business ideas just because just bouncing stuff back and forth off what you do and what I do. So I think network, and I think that's what the young entrepreneur has. All they want to do is grow their network. They're all about growing their network and bouncing business back and forth. And they have that part 100% correct, and that's what I didn't have correct. I was like, I'll just work my ass off and grow through my company, and I'm never going to need anybody else. Well, I was completely wrong. So I think no matter whether I'm working for a big financial institution or I'm not at this point, I treat everything as I have to grow my brand. Everything's about growing my personal business. I treat myself as a brand and a business, even if I'm working for somebody else. And I think that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, is treating myself as a business, even if I'm working for somebody else.
Well, we talk about on the show entrepreneurs, and that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. An entrepreneur is just somebody who risks their own capital. An entrepreneur is somebody who takes risks, but it's not necessarily their own capital. I know their upside may not be as good, or they may not have equity ownership, but a salesperson is an entrepreneur. Somebody who works in real estate, mortgage, etc., is an entrepreneur. So I love that. Now, I want to get a feel for what you're doing exactly now. And it looks like, you're which I like, you're investing in your personal brand, you're investing in PR. What's the end game there? What's the strategy?
So, about 2 years ago, and I think that's when I met you the first time, I was like, I have to start branding myself. I have to get out there in the world. And I don't feel comfortable in front of the camera, but it doesn't matter. I have to do it. So I started really working on my branding, mostly through stuff like Instagram and LinkedIn. And that's when I started building. I started shooting videos, and I started writing my own articles instead of using a PR agent, and then trying to get them placed. And I have, between Huffington Post and Fox News and Forbes. And I just wrote stories around stuff I knew, and I put it on my own website. I built a website called Home Qualified. I filmed the video and wrote a story and put it on my own website, and then I would push those stories out to people and say, hey, if you need any information on X, Y, and Z, I'm an insider and I can help. So I started doing that first, and then what's happened from that within my industry, so because mortgages and real estate is a pretty antiquated business in general as far as outside of the box thinking. Real estate's a little bit better than mortgages, but it's a little bit very, very inside of the box. So what I started doing with that is, as I got out there myself in the world, I started to become recognized and regionally, and then people started asking me, well, what can you do to help me brand myself? So now we're starting these seminars. They're called the Real Estate Disruptor. So I'm having social media seminars on how to brand yourself. We're having the first one in New Jersey on June 14th.
Right? That's on the 14th, right?
Yeah, that's on June 14th. So I'm starting that. So we're starting these seminars now to help other people brand themselves. So I'm going to try to monetize it through that, obviously, eventually. But I really want to bring value more than anything. And I want to show that I'm valuable as a voice, because I think that all that's done so far for me is create more and more opportunity. So now I'm on the Forbes Real Estate Council, and I'm able to write and provide content for Forbes. So again, it's just giving me credibility, and it's getting people comfortable with my voice. And I think that whatever that is, I'll be able to monetize that in some way, shape, or form.
And at the very least, if somebody gets a mortgage from you or does business with you, they Google you, they look you up. We call it ladder of credibility. So I like that strategy. So give us a little bit more deep dive, a little bit more on what to expect on the 14th if I decide to attend.
So basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm bringing in 90% of the speakers we're bringing in are not real estate people. They're branding people. And what I'm trying to preach to real estate agents and real estate professionals is that you need to think outside of the box, think outside of your industry, because traditional advertising doesn't work anymore. Not that it doesn't work anymore, but unless you have huge budgets, it's not going to work anymore. You don't need to have huge budgets to brand yourself on social media. And I think I've proved it on my own. I've done a lot of work on myself. So a lot of the people I'm bringing are people that have helped me along the way, that I've contracted to help me, but they were people who were outside of real estate. Somebody's the creative director of Interscope Records. He's a music executive. Somebody else is a internet marketing nerd. He's got nothing to do with real estate, but he helps real estate people. I have a local blogger who has a huge following. So the people who can talk to these people about branding themselves. But the idea I want to really get across, and what I believe in, is that they have to get uncomfortable and kind of change the narrative. They have to change how they're doing business to really succeed. Because if they're doing the same thing as everybody else is doing, how many listings are you going to look at? How many real estate home listings are you going to look on Instagram? And most of the time, you're going to scroll past them because over and over again, unless it's a crazy house that's going to catch your eye, you're going to keep moving. So what are those people doing to brand themselves to catch your eye so they can do more business within their industry? They can drive leads into the social media by just being that.
That's a good point, because if you make it just about the house, you sell one house, goes away. Whereas if it's about the brand, you're going to sell them the first home, their second home, maybe their investment home, and so on. I love it, man. I mean, I've always been a big fan of yours. I'm glad we reconnected. What I want to finish off with is like a little bit of a bigger picture. And you kind of feel that the real estate industry is going to be disrupted, just like Napster was interrupted, roughly 15 years ago. Actually, probably 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
So walk us through that.
So basically, I think Napster launched in like 2001 or 2002, and it was essentially the first streaming services. People who don't realize that at this point, for younger people. But what the music industry did is, instead of embracing streaming, they were like, well, they can't do this. They're stealing our music. Let's shut them down, which they did. They sued them and shut them down. But what they didn't realize is what Napster created was a new music entrepreneur, someone who realized they could get their music out for free by using the internet, whether it was blogs. At first it was MySpace. It eventually became SoundCloud and YouTube. Yeah. They realized, hey, I can get my stuff out there and create a buzz, and then I have all the leverage when I go to negotiate with these distribution, because all they're really using music labels for is to distribute their music through streaming services now at this point. Right. And now streaming has become the biggest thing. And if you read the stats of the music industry at this point, they're making more money now through streaming than they ever did in their life. But they delayed the process 5 or 6 years. So it doesn't really, their strategy didn't make sense at all. They basically shut down the industry for 5 or 6 years because they were like, we're going to fight the future, fight technology. What I'm seeing with real estate is, now Zillow has something called instant offers. There's Redfin, there's Open Door, there's OfferPad. They're all virtual realtors who are doing business virtually, no offices. They're going to sell houses online. They're going to use realtors still, but they're going to sell houses online. The bigger brands are fighting it. Well, the real estate agent is still somebody you need. They still need to door knock. They still need to do face-to-face business. I think some of that is true, but it's got to be a combination of both. So what they're doing is, instead of embracing it, they're fighting it. And I think it's inevitable. Eventually Amazon's going to be in, and everybody else, and it's inevitable it's going to become more of a virtual business. So now is the time to really attack it and embrace it, but they're not. But what I see there is a real opportunity for the real estate people, especially real estate professionals, because back to social media again. Napster created these music entrepreneurs. These virtual real estate agents are going to create more and more real estate entrepreneurs who could brand themselves on their own through social media and be virtual. They could be their virtual business card could be exactly what you said. When people virtually look for them, they're going to have a brand, they're going to have credibility just because of the stuff they're doing on social. At that point, it doesn't matter who you work for. It doesn't matter if you work for Corcoran, Compass, or XYZ mortgage company down the block. It doesn't matter, because it's about you. It's not about the people you work for. So I think it's giving people the opportunity to become their own virtual brand and then not worry about who they work for. But by the time the big giants catch up, they're going to have some hard work to get themselves where they need to be.
Now, what do you think is in trouble? Do you think the MLS is in trouble? Do you think the eras and the big real estate houses? Because that model, think about it. Broker, they take part of theirs. Broker takes half your commission, and it's like, wait a second, if I could do this myself somehow, like, what's in trouble? Do you think?
I think you have to have a model that offers these people really virtual tools. EXP is a big brand that does that. Now they're a publicly traded company. They're actually really new to New Jersey and New York, but they're making, and they're completely virtual, no offices. Everything is their CRMs and their tools. I think that if you're a brand, and I can think of a ton of them in my brain right now, who's just offering everybody the same thing, and they may offer marketing, but it's canned marketing that 50 different agencies are using. Those people are eventually going to be like, look, I'm going to go get the biggest commission split, at a virtual real estate office, and I'm going to just do it myself. Like, what do I need? What do I need you for? I don't need your brand anymore. So I think that's where they're really putting themselves in danger. They have to come up with a different value proposition for the agents, because the agents are always going to exist. I'm as a young person buying a house, whoever it is still going to want to see somebody, feel somebody, have them show them something. They're not going to want to do everything with a robot. They're going to want to have somebody who's going to be connected to them. But how are they connecting to those people? And I think the buyers, the biggest buying group is millennials. And then I think that's starting the problem. And those people shop online. Like, they're going to shop online. They're going to do their research online. They're going to find the best person online that they can work with, and then they're going to go with that person. So what are you doing to promote your staff online? What are you doing to give them the tools to promote themselves online? Because if you're not doing that, then you're looking at the wrong marketplace.
I love it. And it's all tied together. And we'll put a link. Actually, Ralph, I'll get this up right away. We'll put the link
Sure.
To the event on the 14th. And again, guys, this is Ralph D. Bignata.
But you go. Twice, you got it.
And so, Ralph, how can we find you?
So my Instagram is a good place to find me. It's at Dibug, Dibug. My website is homequalified.com, and I'm Ralph Dibugnara on YouTube and LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Listen, we'll put the link in bio. And Ralph, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.